The ship UES Harmony moved through space like a white dove carrying hope between the stars. Ambassador Lee Hanna stood at the bridge window watching the alien sun grow larger as they approached Kethmora, the capital world of the Valerian Empire. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and now her heart beat fast with excitement and fear. Captain Park Min-ho checked the navigation systems one last time. His military uniform was pressed perfect, and his medals shined under the bridge lights. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Asteroid Wars, but this was different. This was first contact with an alien race that controlled half the galaxy. 200 humans were on this ship, including diplomats, scientists, engineers, and cultural experts. Each person represented the best of humanity. Dr. Kim Yuna walked through the science labs making final preparations. Her xenobiology equipment was ready to study alien life forms, and her computers held every piece of information humanity had gathered about the Valerians. The data was limited, but promising. The Valerians seemed to value strength and honor. They had contacted Earth through radio signals and agreed to meet for diplomatic talks. Engineer Choi Daiho was in the engine room, checking the FTL drive he had helped design. This technology was humanity's greatest achievement, and their ticket to join the galactic community. The drive used quantum mechanics to fold space and allow faster-than-light travel. Without it, humans would still be trapped in their own solar system. The Valerian ships appeared on the sensors as massive dark shapes that looked like metal spears. They were 3 times larger than the Harmony and moved with grace that seemed impossible for such huge vessels. Captain Park felt his crew tense as the alien ships surrounded them, but the radio came alive with welcome messages in broken human language. General Thokmar's voice filled the bridge through the communication system. His words were slow and careful, as he spoke in English, mixed with clicks and growls that hurt human ears. He welcomed the humans to Valerian space and invited them to land on Kethmora for talks. Ambassador Lee smiled and responded with formal diplomatic language that she had practiced for months. The planet below was red and orange with 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. Cities of glass and metal covered the surface like jewels on cloth. Flying vehicles moved between tall towers and lights blinked in patterns that seemed to follow some alien logic. Dr. Kim recorded everything through the ship's cameras while Engineer Choi watched their escort ships with professional interest. Landing was smooth and quiet. The Valerian spaceport was built from black stone that absorbed light and made everything look darker. Hundreds of alien beings waited to greet the humans. The Valerians were tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces were long with large eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. They wore robes of deep blue and carried staffs that hummed with energy. Ambassador Lee led the human delegation down the shuttle ramp. She carried a case containing gifts from Earth, including art, music, and samples of human culture. Captain Park and 20 Marines walked behind her in dress uniforms with ceremonial weapons. Dr. Kim and her science team brought equipment to study Valerian biology and technology. Engineer Choi carried plans for human FTL drives as a gesture of good faith. General Thokmar stood at the center of the welcoming party. He was larger than other Valerians, with scars on his face and arms that told of many battles. His 4 hands held a staff topped with crystals that pulsed with inner light. When he spoke, his voice echoed across the landing pad like thunder rolling through mountains. The first days of talks went well. Humans and Valerians met in a great hall with walls made of transparent metal that showed the city beyond. Ambassador Lee presented Earth's offer of friendship and trade. The humans could provide art, literature, and new ideas about science and technology. The Valerians could share their knowledge of space travel and introduce humanity to other alien races. Dr. Kim worked with Valerian scientists to study each other's biology. She learned that Valerians lived for 300 years and could see colors that human eyes could not detect. Their 4 arms allowed them to work with complex tools, and their minds processed information much faster than humans. In return, she shared human knowledge of medicine and genetics. Engineer Choi exchanged technical information with Valerian engineers. He was amazed by their energy weapons and gravity control systems. The aliens were impressed by human creativity and the elegant design of Earth's FTL drive. Both sides learned that they had much to offer each other, but on the 5th day, everything changed. Dr. Kim was studying Valerian historical records when she found disturbing information. The files showed that the Valerian Empire had conquered dozens of primitive worlds. The aliens living on those planets were used as slaves to build ships and mine resources. Millions of beings lived in terrible conditions working for Valerian masters. Dr. Kim brought this information to Ambassador Lee, who studied the files with growing horror. The evidence was clear and detailed. The Valerians had been enslaving other species for thousands of years. They saw it as natural law that strong races should rule over weak ones. The slave races were treated like animals and had no rights or freedom. Ambassador Lee knew she had to address this issue, even though it might hurt the diplomatic talks. During the next meeting, she carefully raised the subject of Valerian treatment of other species. She spoke about human beliefs in freedom and equal rights for all intelligent beings. She suggested that the Valerian Empire might consider changing their policies toward conquered worlds. General Thokmar's reaction was immediate and violent. His yellow eyes flared with anger and his forehands gripped his staff until the crystals cracked. He stood up from his chair and his voice filled the hall like a roar of rage. How dare these primitive humans question Valerian ways? How dare they suggest changes to an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years? The general declared that humans were obviously too weak and stupid to understand galactic politics. He said that strong races naturally ruled over weak ones and that this was the foundation of all civilization. Any species that could not defend itself deserved to be enslaved. This was the natural order and humans would learn to accept it or be destroyed. Ambassador Lee tried to calm the situation. She explained that humans were not trying to interfere with Valerian internal affairs. They simply wanted to share their own values and perhaps find common ground. But General Thokmar was beyond reason. He saw the human position as an insult that could not be forgiven. That night, Valerian soldiers surrounded the human quarters. Captain Park tried to contact the ship, but communication was blocked. Dr. Kim destroyed her computer files to prevent them from falling into alien hands. Engineer Choi disabled his technical equipment and prepared for the worst. Ambassador Lee spent the dark hours writing final reports that would never be sent. At dawn, the soldiers came. They separated the men from the women and forced the humans into the city center where a crowd of Valerians waited. General Thokmar stood on a platform with a row of wooden structures behind him. Dr. Kim realized with horror that they were gallows, built in the human style. The general announced that he would teach all species what happened to those who questioned Valerian authority. He had chosen 70 human women to die as an example. Their names were read from a list as Valerian cameras recorded everything. Scientists, doctors, engineers, cultural experts, and Ambassador Lee herself were forced onto the platform. Captain Park fought against his guards, but there were too many of them. Dr. Kim shouted that this was murder and would start a war, but the Valerians only laughed. Engineer Choi watched in shock as the women he had worked with for 3 years faced death with courage and dignity. Each woman spoke final words of love for their families in defiance against their killers. Ambassador Lee was the last to speak. She looked directly into the cameras, and her voice carried clearly across the silent crowd. She said that humanity would remember this day, and that the Valerian Empire had made a terrible mistake. Humans did not break under pressure but became stronger. The death of these 70 women would not end human resistance but begin it. The execution was broadcast across Valerian space as General Thokmar intended, but it was also secretly recorded by human equipment and transmitted to Earth. As the bodies of 70 brave women swayed in the alien wind, Captain Park knew that everything had changed forever. Captain Park Minho crawled through the maintenance tunnel with 22 other survivors. The Valerian guards thought all humans were dead or captured, but they had not found this hidden passage that Engineer Choi discovered in the building plans. Dr. Kim followed behind him carrying the data chip with recordings of the execution. Every breath was painful as they moved through the dark metal tunnels. The stolen Valerian shuttle was small and damaged, but it was their only hope of escape. Engineer Choi had worked for 6 hours rewiring the alien controls to respond to human commands. The fuel was low and the navigation system was broken, but the ship could fly. As Valerian alarms began to sound across the city, 23 humans climbed into the cramped vessel and launched into space. The journey home took 47 Days. Captain Park rationed food and water while Dr. Kim treated injuries with medical supplies they had salvaged. Engineer Choi kept the failing engines running with spare parts and desperate creativity. 3 survivors died during the flight and were buried in space with honors. The remaining 20 humans reached Earth orbit more dead than alive. Admiral Jang Kyung was in his office reviewing fleet reports when the emergency signal came through. He rushed to the communications center where technicians were downloading data from the damaged shuttle. The first images appeared on the main screen, and every person in the room fell silent. 70 human women hanging from gallows on an alien world under purple skies. President Song Mira arrived at the Global Defense Council within an hour of the first transmission. She watched the recordings 3 times without speaking. Her face was stone as she saw Ambassador Lee Hana's final words and the brutal laughter of Valerian soldiers. When the images ended, she stood and walked to the window overlooking Geneva, where normal life continued in the streets below. The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every colony world received the transmission, and every space station played the recordings. On Mars, construction workers stopped building and stared at screens showing their fellow humans dying. On Europa, ice miners gathered in meeting halls to watch and remember faces. On Titan, families held their children close and wept for strangers. Dr. Shin Junho was working late in his laboratory when security called him to an emergency meeting. He arrived at the underground facility to find the most important people in human government waiting for him. President Song showed him the Valerian recordings and asked a simple question. Could human science create weapons capable of destroying an empire that controlled half the galaxy? The doctor studied stellar maps and technical data about Valerian technology for 3 days without sleep. His staff worked around the clock analyzing everything the survivors had learned about alien capabilities. Slowly, a picture emerged of an empire built on superior technology, but weak from 10,000 years of easy victories. The Valerians had never faced an enemy that could match their science, and had grown careless. General Nam Seok assembled his staff in the war room beneath the Pentagon. Maps of known Valerian space covered every wall while computers calculated attack routes and supply lines. The general had fought in every human conflict for 20 years, but this was different. This was not war between human nations, but survival of the species against alien masters. Captain Park gave his report to a room full of senior officers and government officials. He described Valerian military organization, their weapons technology, and their apparent weaknesses. The aliens were physically stronger than humans and had better equipment, but they fought like aristocrats who had never faced real resistance. Their tactics were outdated, and their strategy relied on fear rather than skill. President Song addressed the combined human worlds from the same room where the Declaration of Independence had been signed 400 years earlier. She spoke slowly and clearly, so every word would be remembered. The Valerian Empire had declared war on humanity by murdering innocent diplomats. The deaths of 70 women would not be ignored or forgotten. Humanity would respond with overwhelming force. The president announced Operation Cosmic Armageddon to the assembled representatives of every human world. This would not be a limited military action or a negotiated settlement. This would be total war aimed at the complete destruction of Valerian power. Every human colony would contribute ships, weapons, and soldiers. Every factory would be converted to military production. Every scientist would work on new weapons. Dr. Shin revealed Project Prometheus to selected military leaders in a meeting so secret that no records were kept. Human science had discovered ways to use quantum mechanics and nanotechnology that the Valerians had never imagined. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets and defense systems that could protect human worlds from any attack. The aliens thought they were superior, but human creativity would prove them wrong. The first new weapons rolled out of factories within weeks. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through shields and explode inside enemy ships. Nanomachine swarms that could consume metal and electronics while leaving biological matter unharmed. Stealth fighters that could fly invisible through enemy sensors. Gravity bombs that could crush space stations like tin cans. Engineer Choi worked with human designers to improve the FTL drive using information stolen from Valerian computers. The new drives could move ships faster and more quietly than anything in the alien fleet. Human vessels could appear anywhere in Valerian space without warning and disappear before defenders could respond. Surprise would be humanity's greatest. Weapon training camps opened on every human world as volunteers lined up to join the military. Young people who had never seen combat learned to use weapons designed specifically to kill Valerians. Veterans of human wars studied alien tactics and developed countermeasures. The anger over 70 dead women transformed peaceful citizens into deadly soldiers. General Nam created special forces units trained in psychological warfare against alien minds. Human soldiers learned how to exploit Valerian pride and use their rigid social structure against them. They studied alien languages and customs to become perfect infiltrators. Each unit carried pictures of the 70 martyrs and swore oaths of revenge. The industrial capacity of 20 human worlds focused on a single goal. Shipyards that had built cargo vessels now produced warships armed with the latest weapons. Mining. Operations on asteroid belts extracted resources for armor and ammunition. Agricultural worlds grew food to feed the largest military force in human history. Dr. Kim worked with intelligence services to analyze every piece of information about Valerian society. She discovered that their empire was held together by fear and tradition rather than loyalty. Many conquered species waited for a chance to rebel against their masters. Human agents began making secret contact with potential allies who shared their hatred of Valerian rule. Communication networks, designed by human engineers, connected every world and ship in a web that Valerian technology could not intercept or decode. Orders could be transmitted instantly across hundreds of light years while enemy signals were blocked or misdirected. Information was power, and humans now controlled the flow of knowledge. Admiral Zhang studied fleet deployments and supply routes throughout Valerian space. The aliens had scattered their forces across too many worlds and left their core systems weakly defended. They believed their reputation for cruelty would prevent any serious challenge. They had no idea that humanity was preparing to test that assumption. The memorial service for the 70 martyrs was held in New York on the anniversary of their deaths. Representatives from every human world attended as President Song read each name aloud. Dr. Kim spoke about their courage and dedication. Captain Park described their final moments with dignity and defiance. The ceremony ended with a promise that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. As human fleets prepared to launch the first attacks, recruitment offices remained busy with volunteers. Parents whose children had died in alien hands signed up for combat duty. Engineers who had built peaceful spaceships learned to design weapons of war. Teachers and doctors trained as soldiers to carry the fight to distant stars. The quantum communication array came online just as the first human ships entered Valerian space. Every commander could speak directly with Earth while remaining invisible to enemy sensors. Coordination would be perfect and timing exact. The aliens who had murdered 70 innocent women were about to learn what human anger could accomplish. General Thokmar received reports of strange signals in the outer systems, but his intelligence staff dismissed them as equipment malfunctions. The Valerian Empire had ruled for 10,000 years without serious challenge. What could primitive humans do against the might of the galaxy's greatest civilization? He would soon discover that pride and arrogance were poor defenses against human determination. On Earth, the final preparations were complete. President Song stood before the assembled War Council and gave the order that would change galactic history. Operation Cosmic Armageddon was authorized to begin. Human ships scattered across space would strike simultaneously at targets throughout Valerian territory. The age of alien dominance was ending, and the time of human revenge had begun. Commander Ojiwan adjusted her helmet as the stealth fighter UES Shadow penetrated deep into Valerian space. Her ship was invisible to enemy sensors thanks to quantum cloaking technology that bent light and radiation around the hull. Behind her flew 11 other fighters of Ghost Squadron, each pilot carrying pictures of the 70 martyrs taped to their instrument panels. The Valerian military base at Morthek hung in space like a metal spider with weapons platforms extending from a central hub. It controlled shipping routes to 6 star systems and housed 3,000 alien soldiers. Intelligence reports showed it had never been attacked in 800 years. The Valerians believed it was invulnerable, but they had never faced human ingenuity. Captain Bae Hyunsu watched the tactical display aboard the experimental warship UES Retribution as his crew prepared for combat. The ship was twice the size of any previous human vessel and carried weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Quantum torpedoes filled the launch tubes while nanomachine canisters waited in the secondary bays. His orders were simple. Destroy the Valerian patrol fleet and leave no survivors. Master Sergeant Ko Sujin checked her equipment one final time as the transport approached the surface of Kethavar. Her marine unit carried new weapons designed specifically for fighting Valerians. Gravity grenades that could crush alien bone structure and sonic disruptors that would overload their sensitive hearing. Each soldier wore armor powered by fusion cells and equipped with heads-up displays showing enemy positions. Tech specialist Won Tae-hyung sat in the communications center of a hidden human base, his fingers dancing across quantum keyboards as he penetrated Valerian computer networks. The aliens used encryption that had protected their secrets for millennia, but human artificial intelligence had cracked their codes in weeks. Now their private messages, military plans, and personal files were open books to humanize Ghost Squadron. Approached Morthek Station using a flight path that took advantage of local asteroid fields and electromagnetic interference. Commander O had studied the base's sensor patterns for months and knew exactly where the blind spots were located. Her fighters moved like shadows between chunks of rock, invisible ghosts carrying death to their enemies. The first quantum torpedoes struck the station's power core at exactly 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time. The weapons phased through the outer armor and exploded inside the central reactor, creating a chain reaction that spread through the entire structure. Valerian emergency systems tried to contain the damage, but human sabotage programs had already disabled the safety controls, Commander. O watched the station break apart in brilliant flashes of white light as atmosphere and debris scattered into space. Her fighters launched nanomachine canisters into the wreckage to ensure nothing could be salvaged. The tiny machines would consume all metal and electronics while leaving only empty space where the mighty fortress had stood. Across the galaxy, Captain Bay led the UES Retribution against a Valerian patrol fleet near the Zerion Nebula. The alien ships were massive and heavily armed, but their commanders had grown lazy after centuries of easy victories. They detected the human vessel approaching and moved to intercept, expecting to destroy another primitive ship like swatting an insect. The Valerian admiral transmitted the standard surrender demand in broken human language, offering to spare the Yao crew if they submitted immediately. Captain Bay responded by broadcasting the names of the 70 martyrs, followed by a simple message. Today you learn what human justice looks like. The quantum torpedoes struck before the Valerians could raise their shields. The alien ships shuddered under impacts that their armor could not stop and their shields could not deflect. Explosions rippled through their hulls as the weapons materialized inside critical systems and detonated with devastating force. Nanomachine swarms followed the torpedoes, flowing through hull breaches like metallic clouds that consumed everything in their path. Valerian damage control teams watched in horror as their own ship turned against them, metal bulkheads dissolving and electronic systems failing as the tiny machines spread throughout the vessel master. Sergeant Ko led her Marines in a simultaneous assault on the Valerian colony of Zethmore, where human prisoners were being held in labor camps. Her soldiers moved through the alien city like ghosts, their powered armor deflecting enemy weapons while their own shots found targets with perfect accuracy. The gravity grenades proved devastatingly effective against Valerian physiology. The aliens' tall, thin bodies and hollow bones could not withstand the crushing forces that human engineers had calculated precisely for maximum lethality. Sonic disruptors overloaded their sensitive hearing and left them helpless as human soldiers advanced through their defensive positions. The rescue operation freed over 400 human prisoners who had been captured during the initial diplomatic disaster. These survivors provided valuable intelligence about Valerian military capabilities and confirmed that the aliens had been preparing to attack Earth itself. The rescued humans told stories of torture and forced labor that only increased human determination to win total victory. Tech Specialist 1 completed his infiltration of the Valerian communication network and began broadcasting a special message to every world in their empire. The transmission showed images of the 70 martyrs followed by recordings of their execution and a promise of revenge. The signal was encoded to override all other communications and could not be blocked by Valerian technicians. The psychological impact on alien civilians was immediate and devastating. The Valerians had believed their empire was invincible and their enemies weak. Seeing human technology overcome their best defenses while mysterious attacks destroyed military installations created panic that spread from world to world like a plague. General Thokmar received reports of the attacks in his command center on Kethmora. The destruction of Morthek Station was blamed on equipment failure, until similar explosions destroyed 2 more bases in the same week. The loss of the Zerion patrol fleet was initially dismissed as a training accident until wreckage analysis revealed the presence of unknown weapons intelligence officers, brought the general recordings of human broadcasts that were appearing throughout Valerian space. The images of dead women haunted every screen, and the promise of revenge echoed from every speaker. For the first time in his long military career, General Thokmar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The Valerian High Council met in emergency session as reports of human attacks multiplied across their empire. Military installations disappeared without warning while enemy ships appeared and vanished like ghosts. Entire fleets found themselves fighting weapons they could not understand, against enemies they could not catch. Admiral Zhang reviewed the initial results of Operation Cosmic Armageddon from his command ship in Earth orbit. Every human strike had succeeded beyond expectations while Valerian retaliation remained confused and ineffective. The aliens were responding exactly as human analysts had predicted, with panic and disorganization, instead of coordinated defense fleet. Admiral Ryu Dongmin prepared the main human battle fleet for the next phase of operations. Hundreds of ships armed with the latest weapons gathered in secret staging areas throughout human space. Each vessel carried supplies for extended combat and crews trained specifically for fighting Valerians. The time for surgical strikes was ending and the age of total war was beginning. Dr. Lim Chanwu worked in his classified laboratory developing biological weapons tailored to Valerian physiology. The aliens' enhanced senses and rapid metabolism created vulnerabilities that human science could exploit. His research team had created viruses and toxins that would disable enemy forces without causing permanent harm, allowing for massive captures. Of prisoners, Colonel Yu Soman trained her ground forces in tactics designed for fighting on alien worlds. Human soldiers learned to operate in different gravity fields and atmospheric conditions, while using equipment that could function in any environment. Each regiment practiced assault techniques against fortifications built in the Valerian-style. Lieutenant Kang Minjae was one of the original survivors from the diplomatic mission, and now commanded a special unit dedicated to hunting down war criminals. His team had memorized the faces of every Valerian who participated in the execution of the 70 women. These aliens would face human justice no matter where they tried to hide. The industrial transformation of human space continued as more factories converted to military production. Civilian spacecraft were modified to carry weapons while luxury items gave way to ammunition and armor. Every human world contributed resources to the war effort, while volunteers continued joining military units. Communication intercepts revealed that the Valerian Empire was beginning to fracture under the pressure of human attacks. Subject species on conquered worlds were rising in rebellion, while alien military units demanded reinforcements that could not be provided. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was discovering that power built on fear could collapse very quickly. President Song addressed the human worlds again as the first phase of Operation Cosmic Armageddon reached its conclusion. The Sci-Fi deaths of 70 innocent women had been answered with precise strikes that demonstrated human capabilities. Fleet Admiral Ryu Dongmin stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance as the main human armada emerged from quantum space near the Valerian fortress world of Vorthak. 300 ships materialized simultaneously in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with armor that could deflect energy weapons and their bays filled with weapons that had never been seen in galactic warfare. The planet below was a military stronghold that had never fallen in 2,000 years of warfare. Massive orbital defense platforms surrounded the world like a metal ring, while ground-based cannons could destroy approaching fleets before they reached effective weapons range. General Thokmar had chosen this world as the place to make his final stand against human aggression. Colonel Yu Soman checked her equipment as the assault transports prepared to launch from the human fleet. Her ground forces had trained for 8 months specifically for this operation. Each soldier carried weapons designed to exploit Valerian weaknesses, while their armor incorporated lessons learned from previous battles. The names of the 70 martyrs were engraved on every weapon and painted on every vehicle. Dr. Lim Chanwu monitored the deployment of his latest creation from the medical bay of the command ship. The virus had taken 6 months to develop and was specifically designed to target Valerian nervous systems. It would not kill, but would cause complete sensory disorientation that would leave enemy soldiers helpless. The weapon was delivered through atmospheric release and would spread across the entire planet within hours. Lieutenant Kang Minjae led a special strike team whose mission was to penetrate the planetary defenses and locate high-ranking Valerian officers who had participated in war crimes. His unit carried forensic equipment to identify specific individuals and restraint devices designed for alien physiology. Justice would be personal and precise. The orbital defense platforms opened fire as soon as the human fleet came within range. Massive energy beams lanced through space while guided missiles streaked toward their targets. The Valerian weapons had destroyed every enemy force that had ever approached this world. But human shields absorbed the attacks, while quantum torpedoes phased through the defensive barriers. Fleet Admiral Ryu watched his fleet advance through the defensive fire without losing a single ship. Human technology had reached the point where Valerian weapons could no longer harm them effectively. The aliens were fighting the last war, while humanity had already moved to the next level of military science. The first wave of quantum torpedoes struck the orbital platforms from impossible angles. The weapons materialized inside the defensive structures and exploded with controlled fusion reactions that left twisted metal drifting in space. Secondary explosions rippled through the defensive network as power systems overloaded and ammunition supplies detonated. Nanomachine swarms followed the torpedoes into the wreckage, consuming metal and electronics while leaving organic matter unharmed. The tiny machines had been programmed with the genetic patterns of all known Valerian subject species, ensuring that slaves and prisoners would not be harmed during the assault. Colonel Yu launched her ground assault as the orbital defenses collapsed. Thousands of human soldiers descended toward the planet's surface in armored transports that could withstand anything the remaining defensive systems could produce. Each transport carried a full company of Marines equipped with the latest weapons and supported by artificial intelligence systems that could predict enemy movements. The atmospheric release of Dr. Lim's virus began as the first transports entered the planet's atmosphere. Invisible clouds of engineered microorganisms spread across the continents on prevailing winds, while automated dispensers continued the release from strategic locations. Within 3 hours, every Valerian on the planet would be affected. Lieutenant Kang's strike team penetrated the planetary capital using stealth technology that made them invisible to both electronic sensors and organic perception. Their mission was to reach the central command complex where intelligence reports indicated that several war criminals were directing the defense. Each team member carried restraint devices designed specifically for Valerian physiology. The virus took effect exactly as Dr. Lim had calculated. Valerian soldiers found their enhanced senses turning against them as colors became blinding flashes, and sounds became painful roars. Their superior reflexes became spastic jerks, while their tactical thinking dissolved into confusion and panic. The defenders became helpless within their own bodies. Colonel Yu's Marines advanced through the alien city against opponents who could barely stand. The virus made combat unnecessary as Valerian defenders stumbled blindly through streets they had known for years. Human soldiers simply collected weapons and secured strategic locations, while medical teams began treating affected civilians. The siege that should have lasted months ended in 18 hours. Human forces controlled every major installation on Forthak, while Valerian military units surrendered en masse. The fortress world that had never fallen became a monument to human technological superiority and strategic planning. Fleet Admiral Ryu established orbital command over the captured planet, while his ships prepared for the next phase of operations. Intelligence gathered from Valerian computer systems revealed the locations of remaining military forces and the command structure of the entire empire. The aliens had kept detailed records that now served as targeting data for human weapons. Lieutenant Kang located his primary target in the command bunker beneath the planetary capital. General Vormalik had been present at the execution of the 70 women and had personally given orders for their torture before death. The alien general was found cowering in his private quarters while his staff tried to restore communications with other worlds. The capture was swift and precise. Human restraint devices neutralized the alien's superior strength, while forensic scanners confirmed his identity through biometric analysis. General Vormalik became the first high-ranking Valerian officer to face human justice for crimes against diplomatic personnel. Tech specialist Wan Tae-hyung completed his infiltration of the Planetary Communication Center and began broadcasting surrender demands to the remaining Valerian military forces. The messages included detailed information about human capabilities and offered honorable surrender to aliens who had not participated in war crimes. Resistance would result in complete destruction. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula began when Fleet Admiral Ryu's armada encountered the main Valerian battle fleet attempting to relieve the siege of Vorthok. The alien force consisted of over 500 ships, including their newest and most powerful vessels. The Valerian admiral was confident that superior numbers would overcome human technology. The battle was decided in the first exchange of weapons. Human quantum torpedoes struck throughout the enemy fleet, while Valerian return fire was absorbed harmlessly by human shields. Nanomachine swarms spread from ship to ship across the enemy formation, consuming critical systems while leaving crew compartments intact for prisoner collection. Admiral Keth Oren commanded the Valerian fleet from his flagship Eternal Dominion, a massive vessel that had served as the symbol of alien supremacy for 3 centuries. He watched in horror as his entire fleet was systematically disabled by weapons he could not understand. The ship that had never known defeat became a drifting hulk within minutes. The surrender of the Crimson Nebula fleet marked the collapse of organized Valerian resistance in the outer systems. Over 50,000 alien military personnel became prisoners, while their ships were captured intact for study by human engineers. The psychological impact on the remaining Valerian forces was devastating. Operation Silent Thunder began as Colonel Yu's ground forces struck 12 Valerian colonies simultaneously. Each assault was perfectly coordinated through quantum communication networks, while local resistance was neutralized by atmospheric virus deployment. The campaigns that should have taken years were completed in weeks. Dr. Lim's research team developed new variants of the sensory disruption virus that were specifically tailored to different Valerian subspecies. The aliens' genetic diversity became a weakness as human science created targeted biological weapons that could disable entire populations without causing permanent harm. The liberation of human prisoners accelerated as more Valerian worlds fell under human control. Lieutenant Kang's special forces located dozens of labor camps where captured humans had been forced to work in terrible conditions. Each rescue operation added to the list of war crimes that would be prosecuted after the war ended. Intelligence analysis revealed that the Valerian Empire was fragmenting as subject species rose in rebellion against their weakened masters. Worlds that had been conquered centuries ago declared independence while alien military units mutinied rather than face human forces. The empire built on fear was collapsing from within. General Thakmar received increasingly desperate reports from his remaining commanders as human forces advanced toward the core systems. His military advisors recommended negotiation, but the general refused to consider surrender. He had committed too many crimes against humanity to expect mercy and preferred death to capture. President Song addressed the human worlds as the second phase of Operation Cosmic Armageddon neared completion. Marshal Lee Gunho stood at the command center of the massive human fleet that surrounded Kethmora like a steel net of justice. As the brother of Ambassador Lee Hana, he had volunteered to lead the final assault on the world where 70 innocent women had died. 500 human ships hung in space around the Valerian capital, their weapons trained on the planet where everything had begun. Admiral Park Youngja was the daughter of Captain Park Minho and had spent 2 years training for this moment. Her battle fleet consisted of the newest and most powerful vessels in human space, each one carrying weapons that could crack open planetary crusts or disable entire cities without harming civilians. The choice between destruction and mercy would belong to the aliens below. Captain Hong Jinwoo prepared his special forces team for the most important mission of the war. His orders were simple: capture General Thakmar alive and bring him to face human justice. The alien who had ordered the execution of 70 women would answer for his crimes in a court where truth mattered more than power. Dr. Kim Yuna had returned to alien space after 2 years of helping humanity prepare for war. The xenobiologist who had discovered Valerian slavery now served as the chief advisor on alien affairs. Her knowledge of Valerian culture and psychology would be crucial in managing the transition from empire to whatever came after. The final ultimatum was broadcast to every communication device on Keth Mora as Marshal Lee's voice carried across the planet. The Valerian Empire had 48 hours to surrender unconditionally and deliver all war criminals to human custody. Resistance would result in the complete destruction of their civilization and the permanent occupation of their homeworld. General Thokmar received the human demands in his underground command bunker, where he had retreated as reports of military disasters reached him from across the galaxy. The general who had once ruled through fear now cowered beneath the surface of his own capital world. His advisors urged surrender, but pride and desperation drove him to reject the ultimatum. The assault began at dawn on the second day when Valerian defense platforms opened fire on the human fleet. The aliens still possessed powerful weapons, but their targeting systems had been compromised by human cyber warfare, and their ammunition supplies were running low. The defensive fire was more gesture than genuine threat. Admiral Park responded with surgical precision as her ships launched quantum torpedoes at military targets throughout the orbital defense network. The weapons phased through shields and armor to explode inside critical systems while nanomachine swarms disabled any equipment that survived the initial strikes. Within hours, the planetary defenses were reduced to drifting scrap metal. Dr. Lim's atmospheric virus was deployed across the planet. As human transports prepared to land, the sensory disruption effect spread through the alien population on carefully calculated wind patterns, while medical teams stood ready to provide treatment to civilians affected by the biological weapon. The virus would disable military resistance. Without causing permanent harm, Captain Hong's strike team descended toward the capital city in stealth transports that were invisible to both electronic sensors and alien perception. Their target was the government complex where intelligence reports indicated General Thokmar was directing the final defense. Each team member carried restraint devices designed specifically for capturing high-ranking war criminals alive. The landing of human ground forces proceeded without serious opposition as Valerian military units found themselves unable to function effectively under the influence of the sensory disruption virus. Colonel Yu's Marines secured strategic locations throughout the major cities, while specialized teams began the process of identifying and arresting war criminals. Marshal Lee established his command post in the same building where the 70 women had been executed 2 years earlier. The gallows still stood in the central courtyard as a grim reminder of the atrocity that had started this war. Human engineers began documenting the execution site as evidence for the war crimes trials that would follow. The hunt for General Thokmar led Captain Hong's team through a maze of underground tunnels beneath the capital city. The alien had retreated to a reinforced bunker complex that had been designed to survive planetary bombardment. Human technology made the defensive barriers useless as quantum scanners located the general's exact position. The capture was swift and precise. Captain Hong's team used sonic disruptors to incapacitate the general's bodyguards while restraint fields neutralized the alien's superior strength. General Thokmar was found in his private quarters destroying documents that detailed his crimes against multiple species throughout his long military career. The fall of the Valerian capital was broadcast throughout human space as President Song announced the successful completion of Operation Cosmic Armageddon. The empire that had murdered 70 innocent women had been brought to justice after a war that lasted less than 3 years. Human technology and determination had triumphed over alien arrogance. Dr. Kim worked with human administrators to establish temporary governments on captured Valerian worlds, while enslaved species were given their freedom for the first time in centuries. The transition was complex as billions of beings who had known only servitude learned to govern themselves with human guidance. And Support Lieutenant Kang completed his mission to locate and arrest every Valerian who had participated in war crimes against humanity. His forensic teams used genetic analysis and computer records to identify specific individuals while survivor testimony provided evidence of their crimes. Justice would be personal and complete. The War Crimes Tribunal convened on Earth in the same building where the Global Defense Council had planned Operation Cosmic Armageddon. General Thokmar faced human judges while the families of the 70 martyrs watched from the gallery. The evidence of his crimes filled thousands of documents and hours of recorded testimony. Tech Specialist 1 broadcast the trial proceedings throughout former Valerian space, so every species could witness the fall of their former oppressors. The general, who had once commanded through fear, now stood helpless before human justice. His conviction was certain, but the trial would establish legal precedents for governing a galactic civilization. The memorial service for the 70 martyrs was held at the site of their execution, while human forces maintained order throughout the former Valerian Empire. Each woman's name was read aloud as their sacrifice was honored by representatives of every liberated species. Their deaths had not been in vain, but had led to freedom for billions. Marshal Lee stood at the memorial wall where the names of all human war dead were inscribed alongside those of the original 70 victims. The casualties had been relatively light considering the scope of the conflict, but every loss was mourned by families and friends across human space. Victory had come at a price, but the price had been worth paying. Admiral Park supervised the establishment of human patrol fleets throughout former Valerian territory. As the new galactic order took shape, human ships would maintain peace while liberated species learned to cooperate instead of serving alien masters. The age of empire was ending, and the age of cooperation was beginning. The surrender ceremony took place in the same courtyard where the 70 women had died. General Thokmar was forced to kneel before a memorial to his victims, while human cameras recorded his submission for galactic broadcast. The alien who had thought he was demonstrating Valerian power had instead triggered his civilization's destruction. Dr. Kim presented the final terms of surrender to the remnants of the Valerian government. The empire would be dissolved and its territory redistributed to liberated species under human supervision. War criminals would face justice while innocent civilians would be protected and help to build new lives in a galaxy without slavery. President Song delivered her final address on the war from the memorial site on Kethmora. The 70 women who had died here had become symbols of human determination and the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Their sacrifice had proven that evil could not triumph over good when people of conscience were willing to fight for justice. The quantum communication networks carried news of celebration throughout human space, as families welcomed home their soldiers and workers returned to peaceful occupations. The war production that had consumed every human world for 3 years gave way to reconstruction efforts and aid programs for liberated species. Captain Hong established the War Crimes Investigation Unit to continue hunting down Valerian officers who had committed atrocities against enslaved populations. The work would take years, but human determination to see justice done would not weaken. Every crime would be investigated and every criminal would face trial. The new Galactic Constitution was signed by representatives of 47 liberated species in a ceremony broadcast throughout known space. Human leadership had earned the respect and gratitude of beings who had suffered under Valerian rule for millennia. The galaxy would be governed by law rather than force. Engineer Choi returned to peaceful research as human technology was shared with liberated species who had been denied scientific advancement under alien rule. The FTL drive that had carried humanity to the stars now carried freedom and knowledge to worlds that had known only oppression.